first calling, our first ministry is to raise godly generations.
Like, you got to please everyone. Like, you can't be so radical.
We live in a broken world, and there are many sad situations where families do fall apart.
And they're not loyal and faithful to God.
We have to do it God's way. We're going to follow those biblical guidelines. It led to us having to sue the government that we love.
First time being a CEO of a multi-million-dollar company, and I didn't want to step on anyone's toes.
If we were going to honor God in all that we did, that's one of the ways that we could. Not that we had to, but that we could.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Suits and Shoes. Today, I have the tremendous honor to introduce Steve Green. Steve's got a very unique story from his journey within Hobby Lobby is probably where most of you know him. He's the current president of Hobby Lobby. He's very involved with the Bible Museum in Washington, D.C., which we'll dive in. It's had a tremendous impact on my life and is very personal to me. 6 children, 10th grandchild on the way. I was just reading your bio, Steve, and it seems like it's unreal. And so my question to you is, what does it take to be Steve Green?
Well, it takes being the son of my parents, was about it. And just accepting who I am. I'm just a normal guy that grew up in a fairly normal home. My parents raised us. My mother stayed home. My father worked in retail and fairly normal home. And, it's easy as my father became very successful then to start striving to be something that I wasn't. And I remember for me, I needed to just be who God made me and to do that well.
Yeah, that's inspiring. I want to start with family. That is something that I think is unfortunately neglected in today's world. I was recently looking at divorce rate statistic, and it's surpassing 53%. In some groups, the statistic, like in entrepreneurs and business owners and executives, it's surpassing 73%. And reading your bio and listening to your story and just the way your staff talks about you and your family values, you've been married over 30 years now. What is the kind of the key points you feel like it really helped you be so centered around your family while having this ultra success within your business?
Yeah, I think first of all, my father taught us and let us know that family was most important. He, in the business that he was in, the company he worked for, they would say the business was more important than your family. And he didn't necessarily agree with that. And as a matter of fact, as we have co-managers come into the business once every couple of months, he will address them and he lets them know your family is more important than this business.
Wow.
And as a matter of fact, it's probably harder to be successful at home than it is at work. And we want to encourage them to work hard at being successful at home as well.
Wow.
And so we learned that from my parents, and my wife, her parents would be very similar with putting an importance on the family.
Yeah.
And we would say that our first calling, our first ministry is to raise godly generations. That is our first calling. And so we want to do that well first, and then do as best as we can in business.
Yeah, I love that. My dad, when I was getting married, told me, Pavel, make sure if you ever take marriage counsel, take advice and counsel only from couples that have been married at least 30 years. And so that's what my wife and I aspire to do. And we journal this advice that we're giving. And I loved one time I asked a Japanese man, him and his wife were walking through the art museum in St. Louis. And they were holding hands in the middle, and he had a cane in his left hand and she had a cane in her right hand. So very elderly folks. Yeah. And I asked him, how long have you guys been married? And they're like 60 years. And I asked him, what is the secret behind that? And he's like, you love. And if you ever fall out of love, you better fall back in love.
Yeah.
And that's kind of been the foundation in my marriage. And of course, I've only been married about 8 years. And it's inspiring to hear that that's been the center of what you do. I want to kind of expand a little more on that. And what do you feel like in your childhood set a precedent or foundation for what you see today, not only in your business, but in your family success?
I think the commitment my parents had to their faith, to our family, to the regularly taking us to church. It was very formative in my growing up. We were regularly going to church every week, and so my parents taught us to love God, to love His Word from an early age. They modeled it. It wasn't just a matter of teaching us; they modeled it.
Yeah.
They modeled more than they taught it, and so they set the example that we wanted to follow. I saw my father loving my mother. We never saw them arguing, though they had disagreements, as any family does. But they loved each other, loved us, and modeled what a family should be like.
That's amazing. What about you've had experience with your philanthropy work and adoption. What about to the families that grew up in broken families? What do you feel like is the advice you could give there to have strong marriages and not follow the footsteps of their ancestors?
Yeah, we live in a broken world, and there are many sad situations where families do fall apart. But there are many that have come out of that. A youth pastor that was very influential in my life himself came from a very dysfunctional family. Wow. His own father, drunk, and really was not a model at all for him. So as he trusted in his heavenly Father, he knew that he could make a better life than what he experienced and had himself. So it is possible, and it's a matter of having trust and faith in our heavenly Father.
Yeah, that's amazing. In business, it's a big challenge today to keep that same faith and loyalty that leaders like yourself and myself carry out in our personal families and church. I've noticed a lot of business leaders that I've had a chance to meet, especially in the young adults, they almost like flip a switch, and at work, they believe that you can be ruthless and you can cheat and you can lie and you can do deals underneath the table, and then they'll clock out, turn off the lights late in the evening, come in Sunday morning singing hymns, and they're not loyal and faithful to God. I've noticed Hobby Lobby just by the headlines, and I remember studying multiple of the cases that your company's gone through in college, and I went to a pretty radical college, a D1 university. It's just been a tremendous impact and almost like a beacon of hope for faith-based companies. As I can imagine, that's been a tough journey for you. I know for myself, it's not easy when your PR team and other people in your life tell you got to be neutral. Like, you got to please everyone. Like, you can't be so radical. But I've also seen the fruit of it. I remember one of my, most interesting clients that I've had and built a strong relationship with him, an atheist of atheists, like a really strong atheist. And he once told me, he's like, Paul, one day I'm going to believe in God, and I want to believe in the God that you believe in. What keeps you going and rooted to stand so strong and keeping such a firm grasp on the faith within Hobby Lobby?
Yeah, the very first statement we make as our statement of purpose is to operate our business according to biblical principles.
Wow.
It has guided and directed our steps. That doesn't mean it's all been roses, and there's been ups and downs and struggles. There's been times we didn't think the business would survive.
Wow.
But I remember years ago, early on, Dad told a story about one of the buyers that they were working with a sales rep, and the buyer was trying to be a good negotiator and made the comment that we had a better price than what they had, and they needed to do better on the pricing. And Dad knew we didn't. And after that meeting, he said, "Don't ever do that again. We're not going to lie. We're going to be tough negotiators, and we're going to go out and look to find better prices, but we're going to have integrity and deal with honesty and integrity." Wow. And so it has served our business well. We have strive every day to follow principles that God has given us in His Word, which means to work hard, to be honest, to take care of our employees, to take care of our customers, and do things well. And that, when we follow that model, it has served our business well.
That's inspiring. What about when it comes into pushback from whether it's state government or federal government pushback? I know you and your company has experience in it, but for a younger company like myself that's new to this and we're starting to firsthand experience this pushback, what advice do you have for us?
Yeah, there's times when you have challenging times. I remember after 9/11, as we are importing, there's all kinds of new regulations going on as needed to be. And some of it was extreme, and you just have to kind of work through some of that. There's times when it crosses the line. And the one time where it did cross the line was when the government told us that we had to provide in our health insurance abortive products freely to our employees. And that led to a family meeting where we had a discussion and questioning, what can we do? Are there some compromises that we would be okay with? But in the end, it was a decision that if this is God's business, and that's been a part of what our parents have taught us, is this is God's business, we have to do it God's way. We're going to follow those biblical guidelines. And it was pretty obvious that he wouldn't want us to be a part of taking life. And therefore, it led to us having to sue the government that we love. We are in America, travel overseas often, and realize how blessed we are to be in a nation that we are in. And so that led to the Supreme Court case that we had, and we had a win. And we're just so grateful for our founding fathers that enshrined religious freedom in our Constitution, because in essence, that was what we were standing on.
Yeah.
We had deep convictions that it would be wrong to take life, and that life starts at conception. And the Supreme Court agreed with us.
Wow, that's so inspiring. I feel like that sets a precedent for not only businesses, but churches and other nonprofit and NGO organizations within this beautiful country. I wanted to dive a little bit deeper in the day-to-day life, and how are some practical ways you incorporate faith in your life? I know for myself, I early on was hesitant. First time being a CEO of a multi-million-dollar company, and I didn't want to step on anyone's toes. And we recruited a director from Mercy Hospital, which is a faith-based hospital organization in Missouri, really big, multi-billion-dollar organization as well. And he asked me permission if it's okay to lead a meeting, like an executive meeting out of prayer. And I'm like, wow, I'm over here, fourth generation Christian. My great grandfather was persecuted and held in a communist held prison for 16 years of his life. And I was kind of shy, hesitant to say a prayer. And here I have this wonderful executive. And since then, I haven't been hesitant to say a prayer at work, whether it's with a group of employees or by myself in my office. What are some practical ways you incorporate your faith in your day-to-day lives?
Well, we have, on that line, we have different meetings. We have annual meetings and monthly co-manager meetings, and many times we will lead in prayer for those. Not that every meeting is led in a prayer. We have a monthly officers meeting, and it's for lunch, and we'll have a prayer for the meal before we have our officers meeting. So it's not something that we're afraid of. We have chaplains. We hired chaplains years ago that are here on campus that we make available to our employees as they're dealing with life.
Wow.
A loss of a child, or somebody that's dealing with a divorce of their parents. So a variety of life issues that come up, and we want to be there for employees as they're just having struggles in life. Closing our stores on Sunday, as an example. We used to be open, and when the decision was made, the calculation was we were doing about 100 million in volume on Sundays.
Wow.
And
per Sunday.
For the year at the time. Yeah. This was many years ago, and there was $100 million in volume in that year that would have been done on Sunday. And so, but we just felt like if we were going to honor God in all that we did, that's one of the ways that we could. Not that we had to, but that we could honor God. And God has blessed that. In these co-manager meetings that we have every couple of months, we have many of them that talk about the fact that they left a 24/7 operation where, in essence, even though you're not on the clock, you're never off the clock in management, because they got that pager anytime an emergency happens. Yeah. But at Hobby Lobby, when the store's closed and all the employees are home, they're off the clock, and they know they are. And so it has served us well, because we have great employees that have come to us because of that. And we are only as good as our employees. So God has blessed us as we've strived to honor Him in all that we do. And closing Sundays is just another one of those examples.
That's amazing. I'm really inspired, especially by the chaplain part. We recently launched at 27 North a wellness day. So if you're feeling stressed out, with no prior notice, last minute, you can take one day off every 6 months, so two days a year. Now that I'm thinking about it, I feel like you can avoid a stressful day by offering like, hey, how do you cope with stress? How do you cope with this trauma or anything that can happen in life?
Yeah, and these employees are able to go to a counselor, a chaplain on work hours on campus during the time, just getting approvals from their supervisors. We have classes a couple times a year when it's available, and dealing with life issues that while they're on the clock, they can go to these classes and help them in their everyday life.
Yeah, on the business side, we recently, with my wife, visited a Joann that was closing. And I was answering, my wife had 100 questions. She's very intrigued by business, and, being married to an entrepreneur has that impact on family. And we were just kind of reviewing the mistakes that were made there, the causes that led to it. In your opinion, what is Hobby Lobby doing to stay relevant and ahead of that curve?
Yeah, I mean, you can go in any organization and can kind of pick at some of the mistakes and see that some of the inventory control wasn't there, or the fabric business is a tough business, and it's just one of our departments, and it is the collection of all of the departments that we feel like is part of the success. And then striving to, control the inventory, having the best price we can, buying it right. All of those factors come into play. I don't know all the insides of the Joann's business, but I suspect that in hindsight, you could find here's some things that if they had done differently, they potentially could have still been around. But we were always looking at going into any of our competitors, and while we can find things that we're doing better, the challenge is, what is it that they're doing well, that they're doing better than us? What can we learn from them? And there's always something that you can learn from them. And if we're out there always trying to be better, that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I remember one of the first corporations I worked for out of college. Once a quarter, us as managers, department managers, were required to go walk the store of a competitor's store and fill out a form of what they're doing well.
Yeah.
And we were required to submit this to corporate office. And it was so inspiring to see that. I guess maybe not inspiring, maybe amusing, but a month or two would go by and we see our company launch the very similar product.
Yeah.
And I feel like we as Christians, if we had a more, almost like, I love how Jack Stack and SRC operate an open book policy to an extent where we benchmark from each other and we inspire each other. A lot of times people reach out to me and they're like, hey, we kind of want to start a similar business. Can you help us? And I'm like, well, if you go to manufacturing, you have to be either crazy or crazy. Like, unless you have a divine revelation, go in any other industry. But if you want to, yeah, I'd love to, anything I can help inspire, teach, introduce. There's over 100,000 RVs built a year. We build a fraction of that. There's enough business out there for everybody. What is your view on, as an industry leader, to benchmarking, to helping other companies?
Well, it's a matter of doing the best you can, knowing as much as you can about your industry, and knowing what you can do better than others. There's some departments that we have that are our core departments that we say we don't want anybody to beat us in those categories, whether it's price, selection, and strive to be the best that's out there. And part of that's knowing your competition, knowing what their strengths is, what their weaknesses are, striving to be the best. We talk to our buyers about, they're with 70 buyers, they're buying just a small category. And the expectation is that they need to know that category better than anybody in the country, because that's all they're doing all day long. And knowing what the competition is, knowing what supplies are, knowing what trends are, all of that, and providing the best product to our customers that we can.
Yeah. Someone recently asked my opinion on brick and mortar stores and us having physical dealerships and why we haven't gone all online. And I always say the reason we do successful is our customers want to come in, they want to feel, they want to touch it. If they're buying a $300,000 or $1 million RV, they're not buying it sight unseen. And I feel like we're making efforts towards that, but it's really up to our demographics. I feel like on brick and mortar in regards to retail, it's really changed over the years. I even remember 10 years ago when I was graduating from my university, we were handed a case study of Walmart and their business model, how drastically it's had to change to compete with Amazon. Other than my wife, my sister-in-law, my mother-in-law being probably your number one shoppers, what do you feel like has helped you guys stay ahead of the curve? Or do you have similar demographics that regardless they want to come in and see a brick and mortar store?
Yeah, I think that there obviously the world is changing. Online is a lot of movement online, and I don't think the water is level yet.
Yeah.
It's still in process. A younger generation is going to do more online than an older generation. My daughter is delivering things that I would never have thought of delivering. It's a drink. And I'm sitting there saying, you're having a drink delivered to the house?
Yeah.
But that's just, what she's grown up with. But our industry is different as well. There are some industries that I think are more prone to a delivery than others. And similar to yours, many of our customers want to come in, touch, feel, see. They're wanting to be inspired with their creativity. And it's not that being online isn't as conducive to that. Yeah. So now, if they just need another 8x10 canvas, they can order that online, and we have our product available online. It's a small percent of our business. What can it grow to? I think it is still growing, but our industry, I don't think it will be to the degree as it is in some other industries. Yeah. Many people shop us because they enjoy the shopping experience. Yeah. Grocery store shopping is a chore, but shopping at a Hobby Lobby is fun. Yeah. So for those reasons, brick and mortar, I think, will be more of a part of our business long-term than maybe in other areas,
I agree. I had the assumption. It's really reassuring to hear that from you, because what you just said, I've kind of with faith have been telling small little brick and mortar shops and stores. And I always use the Bass Pro Shop example. When is the last time you bought something on the Bass Pro website? And I've even talked to like enthusiasts and hunters, and they'd sit there like, wow, we've never bought anything on the, you always go in the store. It's an experience.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm glad you reassured me there. I was just kind of going completely blind faith and giving that advice. So thank you. I want to transition to the Bible Museum. For those of you that don't know, it's probably one of the best museums I've been in, and I'm really picky about museums. Like, my wife knows this about me. It's really hard to get me to go to a museum. And I think if it wasn't for a mutual friend, Vlad, that really inspired me to go there the first time, I could not leave. From seeing the different, from presidential Bibles to all the artifacts, and just, it's almost like a spiritual experience. And I think it is a spiritual experience now that I reflect about it. It really made me reflect on my spiritual life, on my personal life, the journey my ancestors went through. There was a time when even my grandparents, they weren't allowed to have a Bible. So they would handwrite, like they had one Bible for the church, and they would handwrite passages and scriptures and keep, so they have their own personal copy. What was your and your family's inspiration and journey about it? If you can just share the journey, and then we'll transition what the vision is for the Bible Museum.
Well, the short of it is, I say God tricked us into it. It wasn't something that our family was planning on doing. Yeah. A group wanted to put a Bible museum in Dallas, and they asked for our help. And as we started on that journey, we started collecting for their museum. As our collection grew, we had a gentleman that sold us his whole 10,000-piece collection.
Wow.
And when that happened, the family felt a sense of responsibility. Maybe we needed to be sure the dream became a reality. Yeah. We had the resources to get it started. We had a growing collection, and the guys that had the dream had neither of those. So by default, it became ours. It wasn't a foreign concept either. My brother had opened a Christian bookstore, had the best selection of Bibles of any store in the country, and still does to this day. And he had made the comment it'd be neat to put in a Bible museum one day. So it wasn't a foreign concept, but not something that we were planning on doing. No. Now, the Bible has blessed our family in multiple ways. It has informed our family. My parents grew up in Christian homes themselves, raised us in Christian homes, so it informed our family. It informs our business, as I mentioned. We operate our business according to biblical principles as best we can. And we are blessed to be in a nation built on biblical concepts. Yeah. The idea that all men are created equal is a biblical concept. And so we have been blessed by this book, and we want to invite all people to consider this book. So the purpose of the museum is to invite all people to engage with the transformative power of the Bible.
Wow.
Because if we feel like they would engage with it, God will show up, do his work, and it'll be transformative.
That's really inspiring. I remember just walking through the different experiences and the different levels. And if you love cafes and coffee shops, one of the best in there. That is like Mediterranean vibe. And they also offer pizza and fries, which was really cool too, because you got that younger generation that just loves their pizza, fries, and burgers. You shared with me briefly on the vision, the 3 pillars or the 3 points of the vision. Could you share that again? Because I feel like I listened to it over and over again because it's so big and it's much needed in our society today.
Well, I just felt like that the museum is just getting started. We're new, we're rookies at it, we're figuring things out. And there's 3 primary areas that I feel like is our focus. One is to get a million visitors there a year. Right now, we did 450,000 visitors this last year. And we would love to see getting up to 1 million visitors a year. So obviously when we get people there, they're impacted, they're inspired by the Bible. Secondly, I would like to see us focusing on leaders. And there's a variety of ways that we're focusing on leaders. There's leader events from in the investment industry where we're bringing faith leaders in the investment space together to have meetings there. It's not as much us as just encouraging them to have meetings there. We have a group of 600 Ivy League students that were in there for the March for Life, having meetings in the museum all day after the March for Life. And so those are future leaders. There's prayer events at the museum where congressmen, there's an event where over 30 congressmen were out for a prayer event. So as we continue to focus on leaders and inspire them to live out their biblical faith, then it's impacting all that they're leading. So bringing many visitors there, focusing on leaders, and thirdly, how do we go out to those that will never make it to the museum? Millions will come to the museum, but many millions won't. So how do we go to them? We can do that through media efforts. We have a documentary on a Megiddo mosaic that we have in the museum right now. And curriculum efforts. We want to have a curriculum for the public schools. I think it's a disservice in our nation that we don't teach children about the Bible. This nation is built on concepts found in the Bible, and students ought to know that. Whether they agree with it or not, they should understand the Bible's influence on this nation, its influence around the world. And so we're working to have a Bible curriculum for the public schools. So having millions come, focus on leader, and then going to those that might never come are the 3 focuses that we're focused on.
That's life-changing. And I feel like it can almost start becoming a generational thing where it's passed from generation to generation. Do you ever foresee you guys expanding past Washington, D.C.?
You know, there have been thoughts in my mind. I had thought about, before we opened the museum, we did some temporary exhibits here in the U.S. We went to 6 different cities, opened the door for international exhibits. We had twice we were at the Vatican. We went to Cuba twice. We were in Israel, Argentina. And so the idea was, I wonder if we could do an exhibit, on every continent, telling that continent's story with an exhibit. Whether that develops or not, I don't know. Our focus right now is still the museum here, but you never know where God may lead.
My heart is in Kenya, and my wife's visiting there right now. So if you ever want to start, sign me up for Kenya. Okay. I want to be the sponsor and involved behind Kenya.
Love it.
Before we transition to the conclusion of this, there's a lot of young adults today that are really struggling to find their identity in Christ and God, especially business owners. What could you share from your life experiences, from the books you've written, the books you've read, maybe the Bible, or just in general? What is on your heart to help those young adults to find their roots and become rooted in their faith, especially when it comes to their careers?
Yeah, I think to realize that God has created every one of us with His intent, His purpose in mind. He has designed us with the skills and the abilities that He wants us. And it's easy for us to look at others and say, oh, I wish I could be like them. God didn't make you like them. He made you just the way you are for His purpose for you. And when we're content in what His calling for our life is, then, and accept that, and then be the best that we can be, That's all God's called us to do,
Oh.
and that's all He's called us to be. Bottom line, He wants a relationship with us. Is more important than any worldly success here. And so if we focus on a relationship with Him, letting Him guide and direct our lives, we don't really have to worry about trying to be a huge success. We just need to focus on a relationship with Him and let Him guide our lives.
No, that's inspiring. I remember one of the last times I was at the Bible Museum, there was a guest speaker there, and he said a Martin Luther King Jr. quote that even if you're called to be a street sweeper, you got to be the best street sweeper there is. And each one of us has that calling. And it's not like we have to change ourselves or change God for that calling. Rather, God changes us for His calling and being able to fulfill our fullest potential. The last thing that I talk about in this podcast, and it's literally changed the lives of hundreds of young adults, especially young men, is clothing. I've talked to billionaire after billionaire. I've talked to very high net worth individuals, Hollywood stars, and I've yet to find anyone who is ultra successful to say that the clothing that they aspire to wear day to day is a big name brand. My favorite answer to this day when I ask why someone doesn't wear a name brand, and he's like, well, it's a lot of very sneaky people trying to deceive you that this simple clothing is worth a lot of money. I'm like, wow, that's a really interesting way to put it. I admired the way that you're dressed, and I wanted to ask you, what does your day-to-day outfit look like as the leader and of a multi-billion-dollar empire?
Well, I think of what my dad kind of set the pace. He was at a company where it was kind of required suit and tie.
Yeah.
And he felt like it kind of set him apart as I'm management and I don't do, unloading trucks and things like that as a retailer. And he wanted to realize and let the employees know, I'm no different than you. I'm going to get in there and unload the truck if I need to. Yeah. And so we just wear normal clothes. I'm wearing jeans to work a lot of times. And so we're just normal people coming to work, and we wear normal clothes.
Yeah, I know that was life-changing for me because I grew up very poor. And so the only impression I had of successful people was social media and movies. And it was always so flashy and so glamorous. And I remember the first Hollywood star that I visited his home, and it was a fairly modest house. And I thought I had the wrong address. And then, they're a multi-nine-figure family. And they have like an average car. It was like a nice Toyota and then a nice Volkswagen. And I'm like, hey, do you have like any exotic cars? And he goes, no, Paul. The ultimate flex in life is having the money on my account, knowing that I can buy it for cash and not buying it. And I'm like, wow, that level of self-control. Yeah. And I'm like, well, so what do you do with your money? And it was inspiring to hear that they do so much philanthropy work and digging wells across Africa, and they help kiddos get through schooling and school supplies and clothing. And hearing these stories has not only shaped my life, but as I share them with the world, right now we reach over 1 million people a month, mostly young adults that hear these things. It's seeing that shape their life. In conclusion, any last words of inspiration for the young generation today?
Well, I would suggest that they get into God's word every day. God gave us His word, and it is a guide for our lives. I think of the children of Israel every day as they were leaving the slavery of Egypt. Every day God provided them manna to eat, and a guide with a pillar of fire by day and cloud by night, cloud by day, fire by night. And they still walked away from Him. And it's easy to chide them, but they would trade what they had for what we have. God has given us in His word guides for our lives. And we need to strive to hear that on a daily basis, feed from it every day, and let it be our guide. And if we do that, God will guide and direct us, and it will serve us well.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for following our journey. If you haven't visited the Bible Museum, I highly encourage it. I absolutely, I would almost say you have to do it. You have to visit to experience the history of the Bible, regardless from which denomination, religion you are, where you are with your relationship with God. It's just a very unique experience that will have a positive impact on your life. In addition, if you haven't experienced Hobby Lobby, make sure you take a spouse there. It's the ultimate date night idea. So if you enjoyed a good time at Target, wait until you take your spouse to Hobby Lobby. Thank you and Godspeed.